0814 hours, April 24, 2026. The Department of Justice headquarters in Washington went into absolute lockdown. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche signed a document that immediately authorized the return of firing squads on American soil. 44 targets were just placed on the ultimate list. The radar screens of domestic security erupted. 9 immediate execution authorizations were instantly transmitted. 3 of those targets are operatives for the transnational gang known as Mara Salvatrucha. 2 of them are undocumented foreign nationals. They murdered a federal witness. This was not a standard criminal justice update. This was the activation of a wartime protocol. Currently, only 3 inmates sit on federal death row. The previous administration commuted 37 sentences to life in prison. But overnight, that number is set to explode. 44 new defendants, 9 immediate authorizations, 4 distinct methods of termination. Run the numbers with me. For every single dollar foreign adversaries spend infiltrating the homeland, the federal government is now preparing to spend millions to secure the perimeter. The cost asymmetry is staggering, but the time pressure is even worse. The geopolitical clock is ticking toward a global conflict. The military cannot fight a 2-front war in the Pacific and the Middle East if the homeland is burning from the inside. But here is what nobody tells you. This sudden bureaucratic strike was never just about crime. It is about clearing the battlefield before the first missile flies. The official document is titled the Restoring and Strengthening the Federal Death Penalty Report. It officially rescinds the indefinite moratorium on federal executions previously imposed by former Attorney General Merrick Garland. The freeze is over. The machinery of ultimate consequence is roaring back to life. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche stated clearly that the prior administration failed to carry out punishments against the most dangerous criminals. He specifically named terrorists, child murderers, and cop killers. And that was the moment everything changed. You have to look at the timing. Why now? Why the sudden, massive expansion of capital punishment infrastructure when the global order is fracturing? The Pentagon understands a brutal truth. Foreign intelligence services are actively recruiting domestic proxies. They are mapping our power grids. They are surveilling our naval shipyards. They are preparing to sabotage critical rail lines the moment a global conflict begins. You cannot project power across the ocean if your domestic supply chains are paralyzed by internal saboteurs. The Department of Justice is not just prosecuting criminals. They are neutralizing an asymmetric threat. Look closer at the first 9 names on that execution list. 3 of them belong to Mara Salvatrucha. The media calls them a street gang. Military analysts call them a transnational proxy force. They operate across borders. They have established smuggling routes that move weapons, narcotics, and human assets. Foreign state actors know this. If a hostile nation wants to strike the American homeland without triggering a nuclear response, they do not send uniformed soldiers. They hire cartels. They hire undocumented operatives who already operate in the shadows. These 3 operatives murdered a federal witness. They struck at the heart of the justice system. The response had to be absolute. But the government faced a massive logistical nightmare. How do you execute 44 people when the supply chain for lethal injection drugs is completely broken? For years, pharmaceutical companies have refused to supply the necessary chemicals. The previous administration removed the primary drug, pentobarbital, over pain concerns. They claimed it was inhumane. They halted the entire process. The system was paralyzed by supply chain failures and political hesitation. But the new directive changes all of that. The Department of Justice report explicitly criticized the previous administration. They stated that the former leadership got the standard and the science wrong regarding pentobarbital. They reinstated the single drug lethal injection protocol. They brought back pentobarbital, but they did not stop there. They knew the supply chain was still vulnerable. You cannot rely on a single chemical imported from hesitant suppliers when national security is on the line. What they did next shocked everyone. They authorized alternative methods of execution. If the drugs are not available, the federal government will not simply wait. They authorized nitrogen gas asphyxiation. They authorized electrocution. And most significantly, they authorized firing squads. Think about that for a second. In the year 2026, the United States government is preparing to use firing squads to eliminate internal threats. Why firing squads? Because bullets do not have supply chain issues. The military has an endless supply of ammunition. A firing squad is the ultimate, undeniable projection of state authority. It is a military solution to a civilian problem. When foreign adversaries see the United States government authorizing firing squads for terrorists and transnational gang members, they receive a very clear message. The Homeland is hardening its defenses. The era of endless appeals and bureaucratic delays is coming to a violent end. But the Pentagon did not just ask for new methods. They needed new infrastructure. The Federal Bureau of Prisons received a direct order. They must examine relocating or expanding the federal death row. They are actively surveying locations to construct an entirely new execution facility. This new facility must be designed to accommodate firing squads, gas chambers, and electrocution systems. Run the math on that infrastructure project. You do not build a massive, multi-million-dollar execution complex for just 3 inmates. You do not pour concrete and install nitrogen gas lines for a temporary surge. You build that kind of infrastructure when you anticipate a continuous pipeline of targets. The government is preparing for a massive influx of federal capital cases. They are building the physical architecture of a wartime justice system. This was not what it seemed. This was not a routine policy update. This was a strategic posture shift. The Department of Justice is aligning its domestic protocols with the strategic needs of the Department of Defense. If World War III breaks out, the Homeland will be targeted. Saboteurs will attempt to derail trains carrying munitions to naval bases. Sleeper cells will attempt to disable the electrical grids powering command and control centers. The federal government will need a mechanism to swiftly and permanently eliminate those threats. But remember the supply, what they did, that is inside, but run the number, this is the reality of modern conflict. The front lines are no longer confined to distant oceans or foreign deserts. The front lines are in the federal courthouses. The front lines are in the newly constructed execution chambers. The Department of Justice is acting as the ultimate rear guard for the Department of Defense. They are securing the perimeter. They are sending a lethal message to anyone who would dare to strike the Homeland from within. But the question remains, will these new protocols actually deter foreign intelligence services, or will they simply force them to adapt? The shadow war is constantly evolving. As the federal government hardens its defenses, the adversaries will seek new vulnerabilities. They will employ cyber warfare. They will use autonomous drones. They will attempt to bypass the physical infrastructure entirely. Yet, the physical threat remains real. A single saboteur with a well-placed explosive can paralyze a critical logistics hub. The military relies on a fragile network of civilian infrastructure to deploy its forces. If that infrastructure fails, the carrier strike groups cannot be resupplied. The fighter jets cannot be fueled. The entire projection of American military dominance collapses. That is why Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche signed that document. That is why the moratorium was lifted. The stakes are simply too high. The government cannot afford to house internal enemies for decades while a global war rages outside. The 44 defendants currently on the list are the test cases. They are the proof of concept for a new era of federal power. The transition from pentobarbital to nitrogen gas to firing squads represents a steady escalation of severity. It is a calculated display of resolve. The previous administration hesitated. They questioned the science. They worried about the optics. The new directive strips away all of those concerns. It replaces hesitation with absolute certainty. The science of pentobarbital has been reaffirmed. The backup methods have been authorized. Every single detail of this operation has been meticulously planned. The Bureau of Prisons is not just looking for an empty warehouse to convert into an execution chamber. They are designing secure, heavily fortified facilities. These facilities must be able to withstand external protests and potential attacks. They must be completely self-sufficient. They must be able to carry out their mission regardless of what is happening in the outside world. This level of preparation is unprecedented in modern American history. You have to go back to the darkest days of previous global conflicts to find a parallel. When the nation is pushed to the brink, the justice system always adapts. The velvet glove is removed and the iron fist is revealed. The activation of these new execution protocols is the clearest signal yet that the government believes the brink is rapidly approaching. The international implications are profound. Allies who rely on American military protection must now reconcile that protection with these brutal new domestic policies. Adversaries must recalculate their risk assessments. The cost of doing business on American soil just skyrocketed. The risk of capture no longer means a lengthy prison sentence with the possibility of eventual release. It means a direct path to the execution chamber. But look at the specific inclusion of undocumented operatives in the initial target list. 2 of the MS-13 members facing immediate execution are foreign nationals. This bridges the gap between criminal justice and border security. It explicitly links illegal immigration to national security threats. By seeking the death penalty against these individuals, the government is establishing a powerful precedent. The message is unmistakable. If you cross the border illegally and engage in proxy violence for transnational organizations, you will face the ultimate consequence. This is not just about punishing a single murder. It is about dismantling the entire operational model of foreign cartels operating within the United States. It is a strategic decapitation strike against the networks that threaten domestic stability. And that brings us back to the geopolitical map. The carrier strike groups patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, the submarines lurking in the South China Sea, the armored divisions reinforcing Eastern Europe. All of that hard power depends on a secure, stable homeland. The Department of Justice is ensuring that stability through overwhelming force. They are using the legal system as a weapon of national defense. The Restoring and Strengthening the Federal Death Penalty Report will be studied by military historians for decades. They will not view it as a simple criminal justice document. They will view it as the moment the United States shifted onto a wartime footing. They will see it as the necessary precursor to the conflicts that followed. The protocols had to be established before the chaos began. The machinery is now active. The methods are approved. The targets are identified. The infrastructure is being built. The federal government has reclaimed its ultimate authority. The shadow war has entered a new, lethal phase. The traitors, the saboteurs, and the foreign proxies have been put on notice. The era of hesitation is over. But as the first of those 44 targets is moved toward the newly constructed chambers, a much darker question remains. The legal framework is infinitely expandable. The infrastructure is designed for continuous operation. If the global conflict finally ignites and the definition of internal threat begins to broaden, who exactly will be the next name added to that ultimate list?